Old Trafford for the fourth test of the Ashes. Everyone's had a week to decompress after the drama of Lords and Headingley. It all starts again tomorrow with things very much on the line. We know both teams. England named theirs yesterday. Australia have confirmed theirs just recently. We'll come to that 11 shortly. Vish, let's start with England. James Anderson back on his home ground. We're looking back over there towards the Jimmy Anderson end. Is that a smart decision? Has nostalgia played a part, or is it absolutely the right decision?
No, I feel like it's the right decision because he's just someone who does have a very good record at this ground. He's not on the honours board, weirdly enough, which confused Ben Stokes as well. We had to turn around and look at it during his media briefing today. But no, it makes sense. I think the 3 wickets at 75, I think going on that would have been counterproductive, I think, because the idea that he couldn't turn it around, given he had a bit of a stop-start lead-in with those championship games and that groin injury going into the first test, I think, to judge him on the month is stupider than to not judge him on, or rather to judge him on the whole of his career, and specifically the more pertinent part of his career, which has been the last year. He's been a vital part of what McCullum and Stokes have been able to do, even on those flat pitches in Pakistan, which is why I think the conversation around whether this is the end is a little bit overblown, because it wasn't that long ago that he was doing it on surfaces and in conditions that don't necessarily suit him. What I do think, though, is it brings into focus that this probably is the end. This probably is his last outing at his home ground. This is his last test as a 40-year-old. He'll be 41 by the time the Oval comes around, and we're not entirely sure if he's going to play in that one. But no, it feels like a smart decision, particularly given that a lot of this game is going to be played on the cloud cover. And fundamentally, even if Ollie Robinson didn't have that back issue, he's drastically underperformed. Probably been the most disappointing player on show, really, if you can maybe take him and Bairstow in different ways. But yeah, so in that regard, it made sense. And I feel like in front of his home crowd as well, as much as you don't want to play into that, a lot of what this England team is about is creating that good environment in the stands and giving the Manchester locals an opportunity to cheer on one of their favourite sons is no bad thing.
Australia have actually had a bit more to consider than England coming into this game. They've ended up making 2 changes to the 11. Josh Hazlewood has replaced Scott Baldwin. We sort of saw that one coming quite a long way out, and it's just been confirmed a few minutes ago that Todd Murphy won't play this test match. So for the first time in more than a decade, Australia will go in without a front-line spinner. There's plenty of narrative around that, of course, not least that this is the ground where Shane Warne produced the ball of the century close to 30 years ago now. So that's a big change for Australia. It means Cameron Green comes back into the side, having missed Headingley. Mitchell Marsh made himself undroppable, really, with that century in the first inning. So it's a pace-heavy attack for Australia. The batting order, the top of the order, I should say, remains the same. Alex Carey penciled in for number 8, which gives them an incredibly long batting order. The other big talking point was David Warner. Very unlikely he was ever going to be dropped for this test match, but he is there at the top of the order for Stuart Broad to target once more and maybe get a bit closer to that world record dismissal pairing that Broad is now very close to. So Vish, we know how the two sides are going to line up. First time in this series, actually, we've known a day in advance how they're both going to go head to head. The other interesting aspect to come out of today has been Ben Stokes talking about how England might have to go about playing this game. As you can tell, there's some cloud cover here where the covers are on. They have been for most of the day. It does look like the weather will play a part in this game. England have to win to give themselves a chance of taking the Ashes. And there's an indication that we could see some quite fun stuff from England over the course of this game. Do you think it could be more wild than usual?
It'd be some going to be more wilder than it's been over the last month or so. But I suppose, they've got to be creative. I suppose there's a boring side to it in that if England want this game done in a short period of time, they need a big first inning score to, essentially to win by an innings. Yeah. And they would have to actually bat time then. They haven't asked Australia to use the second new ball at any point during the series. They could probably do with that then, at the very least, batting 100 overs and going 4.5, 5 and over potentially. There's also little things that there was a situation in Multan, the second test of the Pakistan series, where it looked like basically smog from the city was drifting out to where the ground was and basically delaying start time. So the day before, I think they were originally planning on training on the ground. They decided against that, but they went to see the smog. And beyond the health issues, there was also the idea of, if we want to win a game here, having won that first test, we need to get creative. And that's where Stokes first posited the idea of forfeiting innings, that it wasn't as wild to him as I suppose it is to you and I, and maybe you watching at home as well. But that might be something that comes into play here. If you try to think of like that situation where England are potentially batting second in that situation, or well, whichever way it would work out, essentially they would want to only bat once, and that's the only thing they have control over. And I suppose that's a little bit harder given how Australia seem to have reinforced their batting as well.
Yeah.
So I do envisage them being funkier, but there are only so many ways to be funky.
Well, as Vish has just hinted there, Australia only did a draw here to retain the Ashes. They would then have another chance to win the series at the Oval next week. But having been 2-0 up and seen a pretty good position slip away, possibly twice at Headingley, they'll be desperate not to let this series slip away now. If they were to fail to win the Ashes from 2-0 up, it would make that 2019 drawn series in terms of missed opportunity pale in comparison. So there's a huge amount riding on this week. We just hope the Manchester weather plays ball and we could be in for another terrific test match.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.